Sorry. You know, Katie just said there were at least 30.
At least 30.
Okay.
Oh, it's nice and cool.
Let's sit up front.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're a very small group.
Yeah,
and-
very tight.
Unless the board says something about
There's 3 front rows. Exactly.
it. Oh, I understand.
Yeah,
Oh, you know,
really, there's nobody else except us.
Well, you want to sit with you, so. Because.
We're friendly.
I need
We don't know
company.
anybody or all of them. Each one sit together.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, first.
Okay, perfect. That worked out for you.
It says family reserved. We don't really need that because we're only family.
Yeah.
Family, that's not fair.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's not you.
Quickly for party.
If you're late, you miss things.
Hi, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody mind if I take my mask off while I'm meeting? Sorry, come.
And I'm going to use the mic, even though you can all hear me, because everybody on YouTube needs it. Okay. So good morning. My name is Karen Aviv, and we're here to remember the life of Murray Rubinstein. I'll say a few remarks about him in a minute, but what I'd like for all of us to do to arrive into the space of mourning is to close your eyes. And if you'd like to put a hand on your heart, you can do so. And I'm going to sing a nigun, a wordless melody that allows us to open up to the feelings of what we're gathered to do. So this is called the Kislev nigun. Yadadai, yadadai, yadai, dai, dai, yadai, dai, dai. Yadai, 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 dai, dai, yadai, dai, dai. Yadai, 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 dai, yadai. Yadai, 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 yadai. Yadai, 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 dai, dai, yadai, dai, dai. Yadai, 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 dai, dai, yadai, dai, dai, yadai, yadai. Murray Rubinstein was born in New York City. He was a son, a loving husband and father. He was a grandfather, an electrical engineer, an investor, a joiner, an organizer of book groups and other kinds of groups. He was a Mets and a Giants fan and a bridge player. And what I learned last week was that he was an avid tennis and pickleball player for as long as he could play. He was easygoing with a great sense of humor, and I learned from Elaine that he never complained. In other words, Murray was a true mensch, a good person who lived with dignity and integrity and a clear sense of values, and he loved his family deeply. Mourning is the price that we pay for having the courage to love others in our lives. And even when we're grieving, we remember that life has many chapters and many colors, and our relationships are filled with all the subtle nuances of love. So we are gathering this morning to remember Murray and offer each other comfort in navigating the pain of losing him. Mourning is also a time when we reflect on the memories of the time that we have spent with our loved ones whom we've lost. And the slideshow was such a beautiful testimony to all of those beautiful times that he spent with all of you. In the book of Psalms, which is an ancient Jewish poetry collection of praise and comfort, we read that the divine source offers healing to us and binds up our wounds when we are grieving. So this morning, I hope that you can connect your mourning heart with that sacred source of wisdom as a sign of comfort. So we're going to begin our spiritual journey this morning with an ancient prayer song from Psalm 121. It's called "I Lift My Eyes Up to the Mountains," and I'll be singing it in English. Come on in. Welcome. It's the first Hebrew text on your handout. I lift my eyes up to the mountains. From where does my help come? I lift my eyes up to the mountains. From where does my help come? My help comes from the source, from that which makes the skies and the earth. My help comes from the source, from that which makes the skies and the earth. Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. I'd like to offer a poem by Laura Gilpin called "Life and Death," about the circle that we all travel. These things I know, how the living go on living, and how the dead go on living with them, so that in a forest, even a dead tree casts a shadow, and the leaves fall one by one, and the branches break in the wind, and the bark peels off slowly, and the trunk cracks, and the rain seeps in through the cracks, and the trunk falls to the ground, and the moss covers it. And in the spring, the rabbits find it and build their nest inside the dead tree, so that nothing is wasted in nature or in love. We're going to hear a few remembrances of Murray. And so I think the first person who's going to speak is Joe, who will be joining us by Zoom.
Everybody can hear me? Is that a yes? So I've been imagining this moment for a while. I certainly didn't imagine that I would be sitting in my dining room with COVID, but it is what it is. And, we've all been doing a lot of reflecting this weekend. And one of the gifts I realized that my father gave this family and my mother gave this family that same gift is resilience. My daughter got COVID and I got COVID, and we had a number of family members with close contact, and we all shrugged and said, okay, it is what it is. Let's deal with it and make the best of it. So here I am attending my father's funeral. So I've been imagining this moment for a while. Back in October, he was given less than 6 months to live. A few nights later, I was lying awake at 3 a.m, giving him a eulogy. And I said, okay, I may never sleep again if I don't get some of these thoughts down on paper. So I started writing. And I led with, today is not a sad day. And then as I wrote, I imagined getting emotional and getting weepy and having a hard time getting through his eulogy, having a hard time convincing you all that I believed today's not a sad day. So this weekend I was polishing it up and I said, I'm not that sad. Family came in, we got together, we remembered him, we laughed a lot more than we cried. And I know my dad believes that today is not a sad day. I know that for a fact. A few days after that day in October, I was talking with Laura, and she said, that she had been talking to my parents, and my dad told Laura, I've had a long, happy life. I know that the doctors can't do a lot for me because of my age. And Laura said that she had talked to both of my parents, and she was amazed at how resigned they were, at how at peace they seemed to be. My dad was one of the most kind-hearted, happy people I've ever met. He was never angry. He lived a good long 90 years. He was born in the heart of New York City in 1932 during the Great Depression. To illustrate how long ago that was, he played stickball in the streets of Brooklyn. Imagine that for a minute. Think about it in your mind's eye. Maybe you've seen it in a movie. Maybe there's one or two of us left, here at the, at this funeral who can remember that. For most of us, it's history. It's a romantic history. He played stickball on the streets of Brooklyn. That I think that's crazy. Like most people during the Depression, him and his parents had little means. His family. His parents owned a newsstand, and he helped out at the newsstand. As a young man, he wasn't sure what to do with himself, so he joined the Navy. I'm always surprised when that comes up. I'm in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, and it's mentioned my dad is a veteran. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's a veteran. He's what, he's one of the least veteran-y people I've ever met. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative, but it didn't define him. He got his degree in electrical engineering and commenced a successful career. He met my mother at a singles resort in Lake George, New York. They met on the volleyball court, and despite her clear inability to play volleyball at any level, he was attracted to her. They planned a date when they both returned to the city. When they returned, my mother was reminded that she had a family commitment on that date that they had planned to get together, and Elaine had no way of contacting Murray. She worried that she would have to blow him off. She was at a party telling a friend the story, and a stranger next to her turned to her and said, "I know Murray." He was able to get a message to him, and they were able to reschedule. They were engaged within 3 months and married in 9. Clearly, it was meant to be. They were married for 57 years. They had 3 children, 5 grandchildren. He adored us all. He was always happy and good-hearted. He was never angry. I said 3 children. Well, that's somewhat true. I was surprised this weekend to realize it had been 20 years since we learned about my half-brother. My parents were coming over to the house, and my father said he had something to tell us kids. When he walked in, I could see immediately he was nervous. He had a manila envelope in his hand, and the first thing he did was turn off the Mets game. Yeah, I was certain he was dying. I then learned that before he met my mother as a young engineer, he had worked a job in the Faroe Islands. I'm sure many of you present today don't know anything about the Faroe Islands. They're a small pile of rocks northwest of Great Britain. He had met a woman and they had had a child. And 20 years ago, Kara decided to go about finding his father and made the connection. Both of my parents, to their credit, not only welcomed him, they embraced him. We have vacationed together. They have come to weddings and bat mitzvahs. We have been to weddings in the Faroe Islands. Their family. It was maybe 6-7 years ago that I stopped referring to him as my half brother and started referring to him as my brother. I'm glad I got to tell my dad that I think it was one of the best decisions him and my mom have ever made. I know there are family members here today watching from the Faroe Islands, and we love you. So I followed in his footsteps and I became an engineer. I have worked at firms that he worked at. He has worked at firms that I worked at. His peers would tell me how much of my dad they see in me. I can't think of a nicer compliment. My peers would tell me what a nice man he was. He was always happy. He was never angry. As a young adult, he had a job on Wall Street where he learned how to be a savvy investor. When I was 14, my grandfather on my mother's side passed away, and my parents found that they had wisely invested all of their income, all of their money in a shoebox under the bed. He took that money and set it aside, first for my grandmother, and when she passed, he set it aside for his grandchildren's education. With that money that he so wisely invested, he paid for all his grandchildren's education. I know Laura and Alan will agree. He and my mother have given us one of the greatest gifts a parent can give a child. They took the edge off. They made all the stress of life, they took the edge off. They made it go away. They make life easy for us. So it isn't a proper eulogy without a few funny stories. Two came to mind. My mother served burgers one evening. And of course, as most people put ketchup on their burgers. So on this evening, the ketchup was getting low. My father, being an engineer, a man of science, had come up with understanding the laws of physics, had devised a clever way of getting the ketchup out of the bottle. When it was down at the bottom, he would take the bottle, he would stand up, he would put the nose down, and he would wind his arms in a windmill fashion and using centrifugal force the ketchup down to the nose of the bottle. And we would get the remaining ketchup. So on this night, he didn't realize that the cap of the ketchup wasn't fully engaged on the bottle. So he started winding his arms. And all of us in the room, we all said, "Daddy, Daddy, stop, stop, stop." But he was not to be deterred. We needed ketchup. So he probably wound his arms 5-6 times before the ketchup fugue. We got through that ketchup fugue and he stopped. Now, those of you who are among us who are people of science can imagine what might have happened on that day. On the far, there's a complete 360 ring of ketchup through the house, the far wall, the ceiling, the near wall, and the carpeted floor. And we all learned a valuable lesson. It's really hard to get ketchup off of ceilings and walls and floors. When I was 16, that was the first story. The second story, when I was 16, my mother recognized that I was becoming an adult and that I'd be going off to college soon, and I would probably want to go on I probably wouldn't want to go on family vacations anymore. So my parents planned our last family vacation. I think we've had 37 last family vacations since. She planned an amazing trip. We took a full month and drove from Atlantic to Pacific and back. We saw so many of the amazing sights that this country has to offer. As you might imagine, 5 people, 3 kids crammed in a car, crammed in hotel rooms every day. For a month, we would at times get on each other's nerves. So once we got back, we reflected back on the vacation and we all agreed this was a really great experience. Only once did the kids get on my father's nerves so much that he threw one of us out of the room. He, of course, came to his senses very quickly, and we brought Laura back in the room. It may very well have been the only time I've ever seen him angry. Nice going, Laura. Today is not a sad day. This coming October, the Mets are going to win the World Series. You heard it here first, so you can put your money down now. And I know there's some Yankee fans back in New York watching, so I apologize for that. So as they have whatever success they will have, I'll be enjoying it immensely, but certainly it will be bittersweet. I won't be able to share that with him. And then sometime next year, the Mets will be coming to Coors Field and play those Rockies. I'm not sure who I'm going to argue with. Who will I argue with over whether that runner should have gone first to third, whether the catch the outfielder made was a great catch or not, or whether the idiot manager left his pitcher in too long. That day will be a hard day for me. So anyone who wants to join me on that day and argue with me, to raise a beer to Murray and celebrate a life well lived, a long, good-hearted, happy and healthy life, they're welcome to join me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. That was really, really beautiful and heartwarming. Elaine, would you like to say any words?
You want me to follow that?
I do want you to follow that. I'm sure you can.
When Murray and I got married, I was 24 and he was 33. And I told somebody, we'll never make it to 50 years. We're just too old. We made it to 57. Murray wanted to have 6 children, and I was wanting to have 3 children. So after the 3, I was willing to go for 1 more so that Laura would have somebody close in age to her. Joe and Alan had each other. And at that point, he said, you've reached the top of my noise level. I'm done. And he also, in those days, parents were younger. So when we took Laura to college for the parents' meetings, Murray looks around and says, I think I'm the oldest person in this room. He was 41 when she was born. We grew up in New York City. Both of us were pretty poor. I come from government housing, the projects, and he lived, I believe, in an apartment above a dairy store. I think that's true. And then eventually his family was given his grandfather's house, and that's where they lived. Losing my train of thought. When we've done a lot this year. When we found out that Murray didn't have too much longer to live, everybody came for Thanksgiving at Joe's urging. And We then celebrated his 90th birthday party in February. And Joe and his Mets game. They go once a year when the Mets come to Colorado, they've gone to a Mets game. And this year he was already ill and Joe was saying, how can I do this? How is this going to work? So what we did was we rented a box and the entire family went. So it was a wonderful event. Should have written it down. Murray's been fairly sick for just about a year. I have never heard the man complain. Not once. It's amazing. I said to him once, you never complain. If it were me, I'd be complaining constantly. That's all you would hear. But his only concern about the fact that he was dying is that he was leaving me and he didn't think I'd be able to take care of everything. He used to tell me I didn't appreciate how much he did, and I'll find out after he's gone how much he was doing. There's one thing he did that I've always loved. I have pictures of the entire family all over the house. I like being surrounded by my loved ones. He would go and stand in front of a picture and I'd come into the room and he'd say, look what we did. He was so proud of the fact that we had this wonderful family and so happy that we had this wonderful family. And these are pretty much my memories of Murray. Joe preempted some of them. I was the radical in the family. Murray was less radical than I was, more of a capitalist. Sometimes I would introduce him to somebody as, meet my husband, the capitalist. We went to a concert once, union songs. And we're singing along, we're singing the union songs. He's singing along, he's singing the union songs. And then we got to one that was a little more radical than the ones we'd been singing. And I take a look at him and he's singing the more radicalized song. I started to laugh. I said, boy, have I co-opted you. So it's been a good life. It's really been a good life. And Murray, we'll miss you, but we know you're always with us and we'll never forget you.
Hi. It's over 40 years since I made my first call to America. That was because my mother got Alzheimer's, and I realized that if I was going to know my father, I had to contact him soon. I didn't know how. He might be an old man, and I didn't know how long I had. So I made some researches and I called somebody who I thought might be my father, and a woman took the telephone, and when I had been doing some inquiries, she said, Murray, this is for you. And I realized I was in the right direction. So I told the cover stories for Murray again. And I said, you probably have calculated this out. I might be your son. So he reacted just like a man who were told that he has got a son. He said, I have to sit down. And that was because he was wondering if he had told you, Elaine, about me. So the only thing I knew about him before that, he was a handsome man, he was high, and he had brown eyes. So, but what I learned was since he was assigned to work in the Faroes for 3 months, where he met my mother. They had a brief love affair. And yeah, she got pregnant. But when he left, he was a gentleman. He asked her to join him. But cleverly enough, she wouldn't do that. She had only known him for a little while. So luckily, he met you after that. And I don't think he or my mother knew he was pregnant. But yeah, that was the meeting, and you visited us for the first time a year after that. You came as an easygoing couple. My own aunts and uncles competed to impress you. My uncle Tryggve wanted to show off and showed our ancestor tree that goes 1200 years back in time. And in this dry sense of humor, he replied that as he knew of, he was ancestor of Abraham. So that was far longer back. Something missing here. Yes. I contacted him of curiosity, where do I come from and who I am. We got 20 years together, which is far more than what was in my mind. We shared the same passion for sport, and he beat me fair and square in tennis, even though it was in my early 40s, and he was in his 70s. We shared pretty much the same views of politics and general issues, funny enough. We did walk the same way, we talked the same way, we laughed the same way, and we are both pretty agile and clumsy. You took both you and Dad took us in as a family, as Joe said, and we got a new family branch. I bring condolences from my family, from my sister Joa, and from family and from friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Laura, do you want to come and say something? Come.
So my father would have hated this. Us all in a room talking about him and talking about death are probably his two least favorite things for us to be talking about. He would have really disliked this. And I think we've all been joking that COVID coming into our family and meaning two of my brothers couldn't be here live with us today, maybe he had a little hand in that, because he would have disliked this so much. He always said he was going to live forever or live to 100. and outwitting death. And unfortunately, the natural order of things caught up with him this week. And lots of people have been saying to me, may, may his memory be a blessing. And because I haven't lost anybody since I was a child, I didn't know that that was a Jewish phrase and that that was something that was said so commonly. And this idea that who he was and knowing him and loving him and seeing how he was in the world is something that could bless us in the present, which is a very Jewish idea, I think is something that he would love. That just knowing him as a good, kind person is something that makes our lives better now. And so to that point, I found a reading that, again, I think he would really like. It's called When All That's Left Is Love, and it's by Rabbi Alan S. Mahler. When I die, if you need to weep, cry for someone walking the street beside you. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands and souls touch souls. You can love me most by sharing your simchas and multiplying your mitzvot. You can love me most by letting me live in your eyes and not on your mind. And when you say Kaddish for me, remember what our Torah teaches. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Which again, I think he would adore. Thank you.
All of these memories were so, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing them. You really brought Murray to life. And he loved you so much. I'm going to sing a prayer in Hebrew called El Malei Rachamim. It means the one overflowing with compassion. And another word for the one, El Malei Rachamim, is actually Ahava, which means love in Hebrew. So again, I invite you to close your eyes and just listen to the meaning of the music underneath the words in Hebrew. El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Chamtzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Hashchina, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Hashchina, El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim. So we'll conclude our gathering this morning with Kaddish Yatom, which is the mourner's Kaddish. Laura, your poem about memory and love and remembering that we've loved your dad is a blessing to us in the present moment. That's actually the heart of the meaning of mourner's Kaddish, is to remember someone who has died with love and appreciation for how their life has shaped our life with love. So I encourage you to rise if you are able, and we'll say mourner's Kaddish together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, בעלמא דברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומן ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו amen. So may the memory of your husband, your dad, your grandfather, may his memory be a blessing to you. And may you find comfort in all the memories that you have of him. And thank you, everybody, for joining us online. You're welcome. And now we eat.
Love you all.
You're joining us for a sugar tomorrow? Yes.